Hello, folks. It is Friday at 7:30, so you know what that means. We go once again into the breach for another episode of On My Mind with Adrian and CR. How are you doing today, Adrian?
Doing good, CR. School's in full swing, and I've been correcting papers already, and everything's going well.
Wow, before Labor Day. That's crazy. I don't remember. Well, I mean, I went to the school where you teach. I don't know why I don't remember us starting that early.
No, we've always, at the college, they've always started August, like the third week.
Huh.
So,
So, today's show is going to be interesting. It's actually going to be right up my alley. Actually, what I went to DCTC for, which is information technology. And we're going to actually talk about information security while you're online, whether it be shopping somewhere, security with your card. Maybe talk about seeing if you can figure out if you're on the dark web, and talking about Wayback Machine. And the information technology specialist that we were talking to is Doug Wagner. He actually happens to be your cousin. So before we bring him on, I just wanted to talk about something that I've got going on. And I know. So, how often do you use candles? Do you usually use candles like when it gets colder out?
yeah, I think that's when we think of it in the fall. We start thinking about lattes and candles and
Right. I think Ryan and I were talking about this the other day, and he was like, it's getting to the point of the season where you're getting the pumpkin spice and the fall wood smells out. And what I'm talking about here, folks, is I'm talking about Dutch Country Candle Company. They're out of Pennsylvania. It is a small business owned company. I'm a friend of the owner. And she makes dye-free, 100% organic, dye-free candles, soy-based candles. This one right here is probably can't see it, but it's the hot fudge brownie, and this smells amazing. This smells like a batch of brownies
what
right
I
out of
want
the
to
oven.
smell is the teak candle. Do you have that one?
Oh, the Blackwood teak, I've actually got it going right here. And it's amazing. I absolutely love it.
I love good wood smells.
Black teak.
Mm-hmm.
So if you guys want to give them a try, or if you're a candle connoisseur and you're looking for good candles, it is Dutch County Candles. She's on Facebook. You can also send her emails at dutchcountrycandles@yahoo.com. And she'll be glad to take an order and get you some amazing candles. This is like the third time I've lit this one, and it's just, I had this one going the other day, and Nikki came down. She's like, "What are you cooking?" Like, nothing. Just got one of the Dutch Country candles going. So, and I wasn't big on candles, but I thought I'd give these guys a try, and they're amazing. We'll get you your candle, and you'll like it. You're getting the cinnamon bun flavor, so
Cool.
I thought you'd want that one since Nana used to make cinnamon buns all the
Yeah,
time.
that sounds
So,
good.
well, without further ado, what do you say we bring Doug on here and talk about IT?
Absolutely.
Mr. Doug, how you doing today? I must be muted.
Oh, we can't hear you.
I muted myself so you wouldn't hear me.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks.
Good. So we were just coming on and started the show, and we talked about Dutch Country Soy Candles, which is a new partnership the show has. And we were just, I think I had mentioned that to you before, which I've got the black teakwood going right now. It's smelling great in here.
Well, I don't have the smell-o-vision thing on my computer. So I can't.
Right.
You should work on that.
They haven't figured that one out yet. And I think that's kind of a blessing and a curse sometimes. So we figured we'd come on and we'd talk about information technology, and not just that, but IT security while you're on the interwebs. It's kind of a subject that's close to my heart because I went to school for IT.
Hey. Isn't the interweb, if you're British, you say that? Interweb.
Yeah, well, I mean,
it's okay. It's okay.
I don't know.
British here.
Right.
Sure.
Cover my page.
CR, before we get started, can we have Dan talk a little bit about himself and
sure
his work background and just a little bit about how he got into computers and if he knows why he got into them?
Okay. Well, let's start with the last question. I tend to not be real social sometimes. In reality, I'm an introvert. So I went into computers because I foolishly thought I wouldn't have to talk to people if I went into working with computers.
Oh, no.
No, that's not true. So, so I went to 4 years at UW La Crosse. It was a good school. And I'm not going to tell you when I graduated. It was like eons ago. And I went to work for a startup in Madison, Wisconsin. And we sold software to the feds. And none of my customers are local. And I got to go to the East Coast. I got to go to the West Coast. And it was, a fun job to start out in computers.
Oh, I bet. Did you get to travel to DC or was it a different branch of the government?
DC, let's see. The thing that made most of my friends jealous was when I told them that I was going to Disney World, and 3 weeks later I was going to Disneyland for computer shows.
That's great.
And yes,
did you have any in Hawaii or?
No, sadly, they never.
Oh.
I never got to go. I'm sure the owners of the company would have went instead of me if that had come up. But that was how I got into computers. In hindsight, maybe I correctly surmised that I was not smart enough to be a programmer. And so I didn't pursue that. I pursued other things. And now 1 or 2 decades later, I work for a very large company in Chicagoland. So,
and work with computer security and privacy. Among other things. I mean, that's part of what you told.
I am assigned to a different project, but I am a champion of computer security inside my organization. Sometimes to the chagrin of the other people on my projects. But for the most part, we have an extremely strong security group, and they set out what there is to do as far as meeting their internal security standards. And it keeps all the technical teams busy, doing their regular jobs and also meeting the security standards. So we pay a lot of attention to security in my company. They have continuing education. They actually bring in an online video concern to give us training if we want it. And so the amount of training which is available through my organization is actually quite good. And so when you guys gave me an opening to talk, I thought it would be fun to talk about security. So I'm going to put you on the spot, CR.
Sure.
Security is a pretty big subject, you know. I have some things in mind to cover, but what would you like to cover?
I think what would be nice is talking about, you know, just everyday use of the internet and how to, you know, the average person, because I see a lot of it where you get on and a pop-up comes on and, hey, you know, enter for this sweepstakes or enter for that or enter your information here and do a little survey and we'll give you something. Maybe talking about how to be wise and stay safe when you're on the computer so you don't get put in a situation where your information gets stolen.
Got it. In a lot of ways, security is really about privacy. So let's talk about data breaches for a second.
Mm-hmm.
What a data breach is, and you can look this up on Wikipedia. I hope I don't get this one wrong. A data breach is where unauthorized people gain access to your network. A data breach can happen at a big company. It can happen to a dentist's office. It can happen to your office, CR.
Mm-hmm.
And what is at risk if you have a data breach is they can send your information out, which is not good. They can use that information to attempt to steal your identity, which is very much not good. And they can take over the equipment, including the router in your network, and infect it with programs that do the bidding of them. And so they will make you the frontsman for their nefarious activities, meanwhile hiding behind your IP address.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that stealing of the IP address. I was home one day and
if the FBI shows up at your door and wants to know why you're doing all these bad things, it makes it very, very uncomfortable.
Right.
It wasn't the FBI, but it was a couple local detectives that came to my door, and they're like, I'm like, can we come in? I'm like, sure. You know, they're like, well, we have, the first thing he does is he gets on his phone and he says, you have an open Wi-Fi here. So this was about 15, 20 years ago, like right when, and we had our Wi-Fi in the front room for television, like to stream Netflix or something like that. But what happened was that there were criminals that came into our neighborhood and they sat out in front of our house, hooked up to our IP address to do their fraud. So
it looked like you guys were the bad people.
Yeah. Right. So passwords, I mean, they make them for a reason, right, Adrian?
Yep. So LVPD came knocking at mom and dad's door and wanted to know why they were committing fraud.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about how to protect yourself online. And then let's talk about something else, Chris, that I know you probably have. And that is your cell phone. Right. And how to protect that. Because that is, let's face it, these days, not everybody's going to sit in front of the computer. They're going to fire up their smartphone and they're going to go do whatever it is they want to do on their smartphone.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Including
I scroll videos like these dog
including
dog videos.
Banking on the phone, including cryptocurrency on the phone, including, you know, all sorts of stuff on the phone of a financial nature that you probably don't want to get out there. So that's of concern. So let's start out with the computer thing first. Let's talk about data breaches. So a data breach is when an organization is compromised, and what happens is they will send your data out. There's a very specific name for that. It's called exfiltration.
Mhm.
It means they're inside your network, and if they're able to exfiltrate your data or your database of customers or your database of whatever else that you don't want to get out,
Right.
they now have it. The hard part is getting it back.
Mhm.
You probably don't get that stuff back. So in reality, two very large, high-profile data breaches, which started us off back in, I don't know, it was 2016, 2018, was the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, for the feds. They had a big data breach.
Yeah.
Record levels of people got breached. Curiously enough, they had a second data breach almost immediately after that, and that one didn't hit the papers so much because evidently people thought that one was already news. Well, they had a second one.
I was a victim of that.
Oh yeah.
And what bothered me was they have my biometric fingerprints now. Whoever breached it.
Yep. So that's a problem. I can talk a little bit about how to do secure authentication. There's a couple of different methods. They're not always free, but for the peace of mind they will bring you, it can be really great to protect your identity. So let's talk about how to tell if you've been pwned. So here's a good question. Chris, is my cell phone infected or taken over by bad guys?
Honestly, I don't know.
And if you looked at your phone, you wouldn't know either.
Right.
So it's hard. And so here's the bad part about having hackers and bad actors as adversaries. They get to try to break in unless you have something else set up, like, you know, a tripwire or some other high-tech defense. They get to try to break in as many times as they like.
Yeah.
And they get to keep trying until they're successful.
Right.
So for example, if you have a login to your webpage, maybe CR, you would set up a webpage for the show and you make it separate from, you know, any entity, like, you know, the big ones, you know, the big socials, and you make it separate and you have a user ID and login. They can just sit there and churn through it, trying all the different passwords to get in. And if your password is, say, under 7 characters or less, it takes them about 3 minutes. And then they're in, if they know your ID. So that's why it's important to change your ID on your router and change your ID on your bank account. Like, for example, I wouldn't use Doug as my bank account name as my ID to log into my bank account. I think I got something to do with domestic maintenance as my bank account name now. Yeah, good luck figuring that one out, bad guy. So to protect yourself, there's the online presence. So let's dwell on that for a second, and then we'll move over to physical. So there's a website out there called Have I Been Pwned? And what it allows you to do is you can go and look up your email that you want to check on, and you can look up on this website. The abbreviations is HIBP, or Have I Been Pwned, PWNED, which is hacker speak for, you know, owned. And you can check to see if your email has been compromised. You do it right now. So that's one way to check to see what your status is. It's difficult. It's exceedingly difficult to detect a bad guy if they know what they're doing once they get into your computer, because it is pretty easy to hide from antivirus because the technology of how to manipulate the Windows operating system or the Mac operating system. Yeah, by the way, guys, bad news for parts of your audience. The Mac is no longer unhackable. It is very hackable, just like Windows.
Yeah.
And Linux is hackable too. As a matter of fact, there were a couple of high-profile Linux vulnerabilities, which is why you need to keep those Linux installs updated. If you're using any of those, just make sure you do the updates and make sure you update your programs and your libraries because they only need to break into one in order to get access. Here's a good example. I had occasion to join a makerspace, really fabulous makerspace. I've since had to drop personal reasons, but sometimes work keeps it easy. But we had a discussion about websites and web, and I said, I probably should share this with you guys. That thing about what's the hugely popular website host now? It's not Facebook. It's the one with all the plugins.
What is it?
Anyway,
it's not like Twitter.
I'm drawing a my phone. It's not Twitter. It's a roll your own website. Anyway, the problem with and it's not Webflow either because that's a smaller concern. But the problem with those one size fits all hosting things where they give you all these libraries and you can do all those things and you can plug in capabilities. Maybe you wanted to do a very nice screen layout or have a rotating carousel of pictures or whatever. All of those libraries that you're using will need to be checked each time they are written to make sure that they don't expose any new vulnerabilities on your website. And so it's only a matter of time before they find a library that you haven't updated. And if you're a target, they might get into your website. So it's like an arms race, really. The bad guys keep getting better. The security companies and the organizations that promote security, including, large corporations and large companies that sell security solutions. It's like an arms race. And it's not slowing down.
No.
So let's talk about how to protect yourself and your identity. Obviously, you don't want to put your full name and address and never your full name and address and banking account information into the trash. We've all heard for years that you probably need to either burn it or shred it or make it otherwise unavailable. It's still very good advice because physical monitoring and physical snooping are quite effective. So is social engineering.
Yes. I think personally,
I'm here to do the plumbing. Just let me in. I'm going to come in and fix this for you. And he's carrying a ladder, and he's got a pipe. Okay.
Basic security. Yeah.
Right.
So guarding against social engineering is a big deal. Also, if you get spam email, which everybody loves, spam's great, right? You should never answer or reply to spam email because then they know you're real and they know it's not a junk account. And so you have just gained a little more attention. Spam has become such a large problem. I think they actually caught and booked a creator of spam tools and spam websites. I think he was caught in either Germany or Amsterdam, and he was like a 26-year-old guy, and he was doing quite well financially, and they caught him, and he was responsible for some large amount, like 1/5 of the spam in the world came from him.
Oh, wow.
So don't answer spam. Don't leave your email open, or don't leave your email address easily.
For our audience, what are you talking about when you talk about spam? Like unwarranted advertisements, unwarranted email? What is spam? I mean, it's something we haven't asked for that comes our way typically.
Right.
So
Sure.
it could be a lot of different.
Spam is junk email that arrives in your inbox. Anything unwanted or unsolicited by you can be spam.
Right.
So maybe you signed up for a chance to win a motorcycle, 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Well, your email address is just as valuable to the promoter of that raffle or that free drawing, and you had to give up your email address in order to make an entry to win that motorcycle. Well, that email address is then sold again and again and again. So it's possible for your email to get out there, and then it can just keep circulating.
Yeah,
And all those people can send you.
They do, and they sell your data. Is that what they're doing? Is like they'll just sell a list of emails to other.
Sure.
Yeah.
Maybe your email is worth 10 cents.
Yeah, but it's such a pain because you get these things, and then like I'm unsubscribing, and I'm like, where is this coming from?
Well,
Right.
the biggest thing that I see, the biggest contributor to that is PCH. The big.
What's PCH?
It's the so it's like I'll do all the surveys and win this, or it's the sweepstakes.
Like Doug was talking about, like drawing for a motorcycle, or
yeah. So it's these online surveys where it's like, oh, just give us a minute of your time, and we'll send you this for no fee.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get into that, they want to know information. They want to know where you live. They want to know your demographics. And that's where people are basically farming your information. And once they gather enough information, there's groups and people out there that will pay a monetary amount for this information.
Yep, for your identity. And if you're a banker, your identity could, or if you're a millionaire, your identity could be worth more. So there's a couple of classifications we should probably talk about. One is PHI. Now, everybody who works in healthcare or in in IT probably has had some education about PHI. It's personal health information, and the and this was defined and promoted by the HIPAA Act, and that's a federal regulation which defines PHI as transmitted by electronic media, maintained in electronic media, transmitted or maintained in any other form or medium. That would be a fax machine, which doctors' offices still use a lot.
Right. Can't remember the last time I
Education
used
records,
a fax.
Employment records covered by an entity in its role as an employer. And so lots of different organizations can be responsible for being a custodian of your PHI. And so the federal government has penalties if you violate and allow PHI of people to get out. You can be slapped with financial penalties.
Right.
And this makes companies pay close attention because they don't want to get slapped with penalties. There's another type of identity, and I'm glossing over lots of stuff, but I mean, you get it. It's patient names, telephone numbers, social security numbers, all the above. It's everything, your license number, your vehicle identifiers. That's information. PHI is specifically about health.
Right.
PII is, a second. It's personally identifiable information. So this is the good stuff. Your mother's maiden name, your driver's license number. They would love to get your driver's license number or your mother's maiden name. What was your mother's last name?
Or the street you live on.
No, that's easy. The hard stuff is your mother's maiden name, your bank account, your credit card number, your relatives' names,
your dog's name.
Yep.
Right.
Your biometric information, like your retinal scan or your fingerprint.
Yeah.
Your passport information.
It's upsetting to know. I mean, hopefully nothing will ever be done with my fingerprints, but it's upsetting to know that when I was a victim of that breach for the government, I was working for Indian Health Services, and to get into their computer systems, we had to go down and get fingerprinted at our local cop shop and then get that to their branch. But biometrics, what the heck?
Well, that's how I unlocked my phone.
Right.
Do you do it with your fingerprint?
Right.
Do you have any eye scanners you have to use at places?
Retinal scanners.
Not today. Not today. We do let's talk about it for a second. So how do you protect your account? And by the way, there's a quote going around now. Passwords are dead. With the rise of faster and faster computers and social engineering, where they can learn things about, who the name of your hairstylist is, or who the name of, your banking account is, or your pet's name, which you can use in your password. It's pretty easy to get to be able to crack a password. There's something called a birthday attack, which is an infamous cracker trick where they will use a birthday mathematically based attack to reduce the amount of time it takes to crack into an account if they use birth date as part of it.
So kind of akin to a DDoS attack almost.
Well, the birthday attack is a way of simplifying the mathematical problem. You get enough people in a room, there's a really good chance that some of the people in the room are going to have the same birthday.
Right.
And so that type of social engineering and learning stuff about you will give the bad guys an even shorter path to cracking into your account. So let's talk about 2FA. 2FA is also known as two-factor authentication.
Okay.
It is what you can use as a mandatory, you can set it up as a mandatory second challenge for you logging into your stuff.
Yep. I use it.
I would love it if my very, very large bank in the US would use two-factor authentication. And no, by the way, my cell phone is so easy to hack because it's a modern cell phone. Sending text messages to your cell phone, it does not count as valid two-factor authentication because they can do a SIM card swap on your cell phone and basically steal your cell phone presence, and then they can use that to do all sorts of great stuff. And all you need to do is mount a successful SIM card swap attack.
Right.
You call my cell phone provider and saying, "Hey, my name's Doug, and I don't know my password anymore, but I have all this information. Here, let's verify my identity."
Yep.
And then you can turn up this new device I have because I lost my cell phone too.
Wow.
And they're like, "Oh, sure. Well, the customer support, they want to be helpful. They don't want to, annoy the customers. They got to keep people happy." So it's not difficult or far-fetched for an adversary to carry out a successful SIM card swap. They don't even need access to your phone. They just need your phone number.
Well, and that's the problem is, these days people are doing that. They're getting your they're getting your name, they're getting your social security number, and they're not just using that for making credit cards. They're going in and, like you said, they're doing a SIM card swap to get more information that they can profit off of.
Yes. There are some scary stories. There's a couple of tales about crypto wallets that were hosted by the owners of the phones, and they had the crypto wallet and they had all of their Bitcoin
Oh man,
in that wallet. And you hear stories about $500,000 stolen, or millions of dollars stolen because they managed to take over somebody's cell phone with a SIM card swap attack.
right.
So, all right. So let's talk about two-factor authentication and how to block that type of thing. All right. So there is, in security, there's something something you have, or something you are. Oh, hang on. I can't see I'm going for my visual. I talk with my hands. Anyway, so something you own would be like a YubiKey, or maybe a Google Titan key, or an RSA token. That is a very specific kind of two-factor authentication. It is set up by either you or your organization in order to provide another layer of security, and it will prevent a simple password crack to let them get access to your stuff. We'll talk about how you can get around that in a second, but let's go to the other two.
So is the RSA token a good security device? I had one from when I worked with the Cherokee tribe, and it was just like almost on a little lanyard thing that they gave us. And you treat it like cash. You're not going to leave it anywhere, and you're going to use it to sign in on. And
right. Google used to sell one. I think they still do. Here is a YubiKey, which can be used. Now, there's other types of YubiKeys. You have to be careful about which one you buy, because you may end up buying the cheaper one and it might not work. You might need a leg up to make sure you buy the right one. This one, I stole it for $5 during a Christmas special, so I was very happy. I bought a couple.
I was starting to take it literally at first. I'm like, whoa, something about you I didn't know.
Well, that would be another kind of security problem, wouldn't it? So that's a hard token, or what we call in the security biz a TOTP, a timed one-time password. Oh no, that one's an HOTP, a hardware one-time password, because it's physical.
Right.
And so that is something you have. You can, if you have an RSA token, and they are a little more spendy than a YubiKey, you can use that. Now, the other one is something you are, like a retinal scan, or like, unfortunately, Adrienne, your fingerprint. You probably should not use your fingerprint as a 2FA.
Okay. I burned them off. No, just kidding.
Wow, you are extreme. Okay.
A little bit of hydrochloric acid, solve your problem.
Well, you do enough house chores. You can.
Nobody's going to steal them again.
Better farm pineapple. So the three different ways to really protect yourself against a simple password crack are something you have, which is a two-factor authentication hardware token, or some other type of two-factor authentication, or something you are, which would be a retinal scan. Now they have one-time passwords that you can get for your phone, and you guys may know them as like the Google Authenticator. I think that Blizzard has one. That's the Blizzard Authenticator. Those are also two-factor authentication devices, and they are not based on a simple text message, which is vulnerable to having somebody with access to your phone I mean, they don't need to
Right.
steal your SIM card. They could just get your phone, and get it
Mhm.
unlocked,
Mm.
and then they can do it immediately. So the other thing to do is make a strong password. Now,
Mhm.
I was never good at keeping really long passwords in my head. I know people. I'm like, well, where do you keep your passwords? This is what's in my head. I'm like, you have all your passwords in your head? He goes, yep. And I said, okay, you're
Wow.
smart. Yeah. So I use Password Manager, an online password manager for that. And there are some that are out there. There are some that are quite well favored, and there's some that are not as well favored. But I think even Firefox and maybe Google both have password managers now.
Yeah.
So if you are willing to trust Google, some people are, not going to judge. You can have them manage your passwords too.
Mm-hmm.
So don't reuse your passwords, because that's a big problem. So
Mhm.
if you have a very nice complex password that you're using for your Facebook account or for your bank, and you sign up for something, maybe you want to, sign up for, baking classes, because you got a fancy pants mixer and you want to learn how to do bread. Well, don't use that same password, because if this bakery or whoever's teaching the bakery classes loses your account, then that password is out there.
Right.
Mhm.
So don't reuse your passwords. So the common rule for making a secure password is one each of uppercase, lowercase, numeric digit, or a special character. Well, and a special character. So if you have
Mm-hmm.
all four of those things and your password is at least 8 characters long, that's the minimum.
Mhm.
Right.
Preferable is a prime number above 13. So, 17, I don't know the
Mhm.
primes above 17, but there are several. Or something at least sufficiently long that will give somebody a little bit of a challenge if they're going to run a password cracker like Jack the Ripper against your password.
Mm-hmm.
Jack the Ripper is an old one. I'm sure there are better tools out there now.
But those
Yeah,
are the ones
just-
they just sit and go back and back. I mean, they just do it automatically, like try to crack into your account. And it can be It's auto-generated, obviously, right?
No, computers are very efficient.
Yep.
And they can, if the bad guys can set them up to just keep slamming away on Adrian's account ID and password. Obviously, using, Adrian 88 as your logon ID is probably not a great idea. You probably want to mix that up.
Right.
Get cute. Throw in a pound sign, or don't use the letter A at all in your
start with
ID.
I hate the people that stole my fingerprints, special character followed by a 15 long numeric.
Well, see, now we know your password.
and please, for the love of God, nobody use 1, 2, 3, 4. That is just
Well, that doesn't meet the 8-character limit.
no. But I've heard of people doing passcodes with numerical lines, and it's just like, yeah, don't do it. It's
okay. So if they can guess your logon ID, it takes under 3 minutes to crack a password, which is 7 characters long.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
right.
Just 3 minutes, and you're pwned, and that account is broken. Once they're in on your account, they can look at your email and learn all sorts of stuff about you and your personal history. Yeah, losing your email account is one of the big no-nos. And that's one of the prizes. They want to get in on your email because they can tell a great deal about you from your email. All right, so let's go over to some of the other ways. Let's see. We talked about 2FA. So protecting your email security is a must. And by the way, Google now allows you to set up 2-factor authentication to log into Google. So my Gmail account, I don't get into my Gmail account with a password. I have to have my YubiKey, the right YubiKey, because you can have more than one. And then when I try to log into my Gmail account, it will challenge me and it'll say, well, place your two-factor authentication device into your USB key and press the button. And then you got to do that, and it has to match up. And then I can get into my email account.
Yeah, that would be similar for like a Facebook account, or
I don't know which of the socials support real two-factor authentication.
Yeah, I don't think Facebook has real 2FA at this point.
Mm-hmm.
They have something they call 2FA, but it's not an actual physical key.
Yep. Now, if they have you log in and they challenge you to prove that you are a human, that's just to prevent the bad guys from churning on your password, 10,000 times in the next hour.
Okay, yeah.
We'll pick out all the motorcycles, and that's called a CAPTCHA.
Mm-hmm.
CAPTCHA.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm going to say it wrong, but
yeah,
that's what that's
CAPTCHA.
called. Yep. And that's one way to slow down the password crackers.
Okay, that explains that.
Yeah, it's old technology, but you know what? It works really well.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Let's talk about cell phone security for a second. There are numerous online articles about how phone security matters, and the cell phone industry has pushed back on it, saying that text messages are easily accessible and trusted, and it should be used to verify identity. Well, that ship has sailed.
Right.
It is ridiculously simple for somebody to get access to your phone or your phone account, and then verify, to your big bank that they are you, and then they social engineer their way into your bank account.
Mm-hmm.
So relying on SMS messages, and here's the thing that kills me. So you try to get into Google, or I try to get into my bank, and by the way, none of the U.S. banks support real two-factor authentication. At least they didn't 4 months ago when I checked. But if they did, or if Google does, you can actually defeat that and click on, I really forgot my stuff. Please call me and tell me my password and allow me to log in.
Oh, no.
Wow.
So
whoever has your phone has it.
Right. And so that's the catch-22. You go to all this trouble to set up two-factor authentication with a very, very large bank or the very large healthcare company or whoever it is. And they want to make it easy to get your stuff back because they want you to be a happy customer. Right. And so, they're happy to just, we can do a voice call. And if you provide the right information, we'll think it's Doug. And then you're good to go. We'll let you reset your password. Yeah. If they've gone dumpster diving outside of my house, in a bad month where I didn't shred everything I needed to shred.
I can't believe you'd have anything in the garbage with PHI or PII on it.
Actually, my girlfriend is a lot more careful about that than I am. But I don't care. I've got my YubiKey. I'm good. So it's difficult to make that all stick when the large concerns will easily defeat their own two-factor authentication to keep customers happy. That is a bridge that we have to cross as consumers, which is getting the providers who decide to switch to two-factor authentication to really make them stick to their guns, have them make you go down to the branch and show your driver's license before they'll unlock your account.
So that might even be, in people's mind when they are selecting a financial institution, is what security do they support and run on?
Yes.
I mean, that's probably a bigger question than the YubiKey, obviously. But I mean, that's one of the things that would indicate maybe if they're conscientious of security.
Or if they're too small to really have adequate staff to support that kind of security program, do you want to put your $1 million check in their bank?
Right.
Yeah. Well, you IT experts are expensive,
Well, what I told somebody, this is one of the IT teams and the business teams, and I said, I don't trust any of them. And it's not that I don't trust their professionalism. It's just that sometimes they make mistakes.
Right.
And so do
everybody's human. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we got about 10 minutes left in the show already. Fancy that. Yeah.
All right. So let me go over the 3 things to do to protect yourself. Shred any paper or garbage that contains your cell phone number and other PII, personally identifiable information. Guard against SIM swapping on your phone.
Okay.
And avoid free or open Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And if you must use, if you must use open Wi-Fi, then use a VPN.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the big 3. That's all I got.
You don't believe this. One time we were at the airport and we were working on our computers and corresponding to our clients, and another consultant and I were sitting there, and this man comes up to us and he says, I can't get on the Wi-Fi. Can I hotspot off your phone? I'm like, no. like, do people really let you?
Social engineering.
Yep.
Wow. We were just blown away. Like, we knew what he wanted. He wasn't, obviously he wanted to get into our systems.
Yep.
Well, and VPNs are actually a very smart thing to have.
Yes, they are. That's a whole nother show.
Right. Yeah, I could talk about that subject for hours.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what on my computer I have some. Norton does that for me. Routes it through. Is that routed through a VPN? Is that appropriate to say?
Sure.
So it kind of builds a security protection around your IP address. Is that right? Or
correct. Yes, correct.
Okay.
Common trick of VPN users was using them to appear like you were from England, and then you could watch all of your favorite English shows from large streaming organizations that like to keep you tied to the U.S., for example.
They do have some good shows, though.
Well, so do the Canadians, but the Canadian shows down here.
Yeah. So I think
I wanted to ask him about the Wayback Machine.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the Wayback Machine, you had mentioned it to me probably about a month ago when we were talking about this. I'm like, what? Can you tell our audience what is the Wayback Machine?
Well, let me make sure it's up. Because sometimes they go under because they either lose funding or the maintainers decide not to maintain them anymore. All right. Explore more than 38 billion web pages saved over time. What it does is it allows you to view web pages in the past.
Like, give me an example.
Maybe you wanted to, maybe you know that Facebook is now approaching 18 years, 24 years old or whatever.
Right.
And you wanted to know what Facebook pages looked like 20 years ago.
Okay.
You could go into the Wayback Machine and look at what, their web page looked like 20 years ago.
Wow.
Or, maybe you're questioning whether some retailer has raised the price on something which you absolutely love. You're like, well, wait a minute. I am sure that last Christmas it was actually more expensive than it is now. Why is that? And you go to the Wayback Machine and you look it up on the Wayback Machine. Maybe you find out some interesting feature about that thing that they were selling, in Christmas this year or in Christmas last year or 2 Christmases ago, and you just didn't realize that there was an important piece they left out.
Okay. Well,
Well,
that's
right.
the stand in this. No wonder it's so cheap.
interesting. Yeah.
So
What if, the other thing you had told me about, which I didn't even ever think of, like, I'm like, that's brilliant. It's so simple and brilliant. It's the Shell email account.
that.
Recommendation.
Yeah, Google is getting ready to shut all those down, by the way.
Mhm.
If you have one and you haven't used it for a while, it could soon disappear.
Yes.
You can have more than one email account. One would be, maybe you really, really, really want that rider mower, and you're downtown, and the business that you often frequent is holding a raffle, or whatever,
Right.
and you want to put your name in for that rider because it looks great. And they're going to send you a bunch of spam about lawn care products, and you'll get an email
Mm-hmm.
full of weed killer, and so years and years of seasonal information about lawn aeration and stuff. Or for more of a personal nature, maybe somebody whom you must communicate with, but you really don't want to give them your real email address, you would then give them your Shell account or your alternate account.
So you can still get the information, but it's not going to come into your prime email basket or your prime email.
Right. And then next week you'll forget about it and sign up for, the Tupperware thing.
Yeah, I think I have 2 Gmail accounts out there.
Well, most people don't have it in mind to switch it when they want to get on that Tupperware list. So, it's good to say, but it's hard to practice. For example, Gmail is not the only provider of email. However, Gmail does a really great job of filtering out spam. They actually have entire teams, I don't know, probably dozens and dozens of people whose only job it is to do email security. And so if you're going with an email provider, do your homework on them. Don't go to Bob's Croissants and email down the road because they may not do a great job on hosting your email.
That's hilarious.
You may want to go with a larger company that has an established reputation. No, nothing against Bob or his croissants.
Yeah, or his croissants.
Right.
Yes.
Sound good.
So, well, I can't believe we're already up against time. I think we'll definitely have you back sometime, and we'll delve into another subject inside of IT.
We'll definitely have you back whether you want to be on the show or not.
Right. But it was great talking to you, Doug, and learning how you got into IT and basically some tricks and tips of how to stay safe while you're on the internet, and better ways to boost your security.
Yeah, there's one thing I forgot.
Sure.
There's a website that you can use to check a web address, and that one is run by Trend Micro.
Okay.
And so it's globalsitesafety.trendmicro.com, and you can plug in a questionable website to have it checked out, and they will have already checked that website out, and if they haven't seen it before, they will check it out. Reach out to me afterwards. I will send you the links for the stuff we talked about.
Sure.
That's great. And one more time, can we have the name of your fob or your key?
It's a YubiKey.
A YubiKey, and
YUBI.
We can get those at Microsoft, or where do we go to get those?
Well, this one is, I think it's a European concern.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm sure if you looked up on Amazon, they might.
Yeah.
Or just Google it, you'll be able to find a retailer.
I'm really thinking that's the best way to go. I mean, for 2-factor identification.
Or, the Google Authenticator on your phone.
Right.
Or there are other choices. You have choices.
Right. But I think for physical, that's the best 2FA.
It is this month.
Right.
You know, there could be other products.
Yeah. Right. Well, thank you so much, Doug.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming on, Doug. And like I said, we'll have you on again at some point.
If you're willing.
You guys are a charming company. Thank you so much for tolerating me.
You're welcome. Well, we'll
Thanks, Doug.
have a good night. We'll talk to you later.
All right.
Bye.
Yep. Bye. All right, folks. Well, that was Doug.
That was awesome.
Very, very interesting person to talk to. I always enjoy the time that I get to talk to him. And actually, I don't know if I told everybody, but family member. So far and few between when we get to see him. So it was nice to see him, even though it was over internet. But that was our talk on IT safety. The sad thing about it is we hardly scratched the surface on that subject. But I mean,
well, yeah, covered some of the bases. I mean, it's like locking your door at night. You just have to think, that we're not in the Norman Rockwell time period where we don't have to think about these things.
So let's briefly, before we leave here, let's briefly talk about what we're doing next week. Let's see, and that falls into, so next week, next Friday.
It is it
we are doing that. Yeah, the 7th. Next week is Friday the 7th.
And we're doing Queen Mary.
And we're going to be talking about the hauntings and happenings of the Queen Mary. Queen Mary was a cruise ship that was built in the late 30s, early 40s. She was pressed into passenger service.
She was from Her Royal Majesty's fleet.
Yes, so she was a RMS. She was a English ship. She was pressed into passenger service in the late 30s. A war broke out. A lot of people will understand that in World War II, when the U.S. got into it, that wasn't the start of World War II. World War II for the European countries started in mid to late 30s.
Was it that early? I know we came in at 43. I thought when we came in,
we came in in 41. We came in December of 41.
Earlier than I thought. Oh, because they ended towards 40.
Right. So
I have to read some history.
The war had been going on since like 38, 39. And even longer before that. But the physical fighting started in 38, 39. So she was pressed into service around that time. Now, when America got into it, that's when she was pressed into military service. So she was repainted from the black and white typical ocean liner that you would think of that day. RMS Olympic, RMS Titanic, Britannic. They were all in that black and white two-tone. So when the Queen Mary was pressed into military service, she was painted haze green underway. Basically, you're wanting to fool the periscope on a submarine in thinking that you're not an actual ship, but you're just part of the horizon.
Yeah.
Right. So she ferried thousands and thousands and thousands of U.S. servicemen from the U.S. to embarkation, from embarkation points to Europe. And there was a unfortunate accident while they were out at sea where they were zigzagging to make it harder for the subs to hit them, target them, and track them. She zigged into a British destroyer escort's path, and she sliced this destroyer escort in half.
Wow.
So there was damage on the Queen Mary. The destroyer escort was lost, and there were lives lost on that because those are small ships.
Wow.
But, so next week we're going to be talking about a little bit of history of her, and then I actually got to tour the Queen Mary and the Russian Foxtrot submarine that's next to her. They're moored in Long Beach. It's been a while. I was aboard, I think, when I was a junior in high school. So that's over 20 years ago. But we'll be talking about the history of the ship, and then we'll be talking about some of the hauntings that have taken place and things that not only have been reported, but things that I have seen while I was on board.
Well, that'll be interesting.
Yeah. And then that's the first week of September. And then that will bring us to the next week, which is the 8th. What did we have planned for the 8th?
We were talking to Neil Risto, who is a pastor at Our Savior's Lutheran Church, and I got to route back with him to pin him down a little bit on topics. Very interesting person, and it could go several different ways. So Neil Risto will be on the 8th.
Well, because not only...
No.
Yeah, the 8th.
Okay.
Yeah. So not only is he a Lutheran pastor, he was, like Doxy, he was a U.S. Navy corpsman. And that might be, we might be talking to him on his experience in that, or I mean, that would be interesting for me, but I think just shooting it to him to where, let's talk about whatever you felt led to talk about.
Yeah. I think so too. Very interesting man. We'll have him on in 2 weeks.
And then I'm going to talk about, what was that?
That's in 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yep. And then I'm going to mention one more show, which is 3 weeks out. And I'm going to mention it because it's important to me. And we have a post on our Facebook page that has we've been advertising this show for about a month and a half now, and it's just the number of people who have commented on the show we're going to do.
Last time I looked, it was over 800.
Right.
And I think because it's like if you ask somebody that was alive who's a little bit older than me, not much, about where were you the day JFK was assassinated, they can tell you about where they were, what the colors are, what people, because trauma embeds memory. There's biochemicals where trauma will embed a memory. And a lot of people have been talking about their memories of 9/11. And so I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah. So our show and it's going to actually be on the 11th. September 11th, we're going to do a reflection and remembrance show. It being 21 years this year since that happened. I mean, if you and I briefly step back 21 years, I was junior in high school. I was still under your roof. I wasn't an adult yet, and there was, probably a good 1,500 students in that school today, in that school that day that went through that trauma.
Yeah. And that's what we see a lot on the comments, CR, is that a lot of people remember, well, I was in grade school or I was in high school, and the whole day we sat around the TV.
Right.
Mhm.
So we're going to be talking about, not only you and I are going to be talking about our personal experiences. We're going to be monitoring the chat that night.
Are we going to
And
get Doc Z on, do you think?
I'm sure. Yeah, I would like to, because
Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about our personal family rescue mission, because I was in a banking community out east, and not in New York, but the planes were not going to be reinstated at the same time that they were at other airports. And anyway, we'll talk more about what we did with that situation next week.
Right. So, yeah. So that's the 3 weeks ahead that we'll talk about. And I mean, I could sit here and go through our whole thing, but I think that would confuse people. But I think three weeks is a good start. I had a really good time talking tonight. You know, always fun talking about something that you're passionate about. You know, I may not work in that subject, but that's something I'm so passionate about. And so any plans before we go? Any plans this weekend?
Yeah, we're gonna take the Larges out for dinner. So that was our wedding gift to them, and we haven't done that yet. So we're gonna do that probably Sunday. And Dan's up at the farm tonight. So yeah, so I'm gonna also get caught up on all my correction and putting out assignments for next week. So
right. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna stay home today. This week's kind of been a rough week for me as far as my back and things go. So I think
the heat index hasn't been good either.
Yeah,
so
and it's gonna be another toasty one tomorrow.
Yesterday, I'm like, Dan, can we ride bikes? He's like, it's just way too hot out there right now.
Right. Well, I remember last Saturday when I was out at the museum, I was actually doing physical work. I was actually up on a man lift, probably, I don't know, 10, 15 feet on a man lift, stripping paint off of the
and there was no,
car.
I mean, there's no air conditioner, obviously, when you're doing that.
Yeah, no, not in our bays.
The heat index is 3 digits.
Yep, and I felt like I rebooted about 3 times when I was working out there last weekend.
Yeah, and your clothes are pretty heavy too. You know,
yeah,
like it's not like you're in summer breeze outfit.
I think I will just stay home. Like the last 3 days, I have not gone anywhere in the last 3 days.
I'm an introvert. I love it.
Sat in my chair or in my bed and watched TV. And I think,
that's the only thing, like I get into sloth mode, and that's not healthy either. But being an introvert, I'd rather be at home than anywhere.
Right. And that's with me, if it's not something I want to do or I'm not interested in doing, I'll just stay home and play games on the computer or delve into a show. Nikki and I are slogging our way through Chicago Fire right now. So we use Peacock and we absolutely love it. The only thing is, I wish there was like one streaming service that had everything underneath it. Because,
right.
Like there are shows I want to watch, but we don't have that platform.
Well, same here. Same here. Well, CR, let's wrap it up. And I sure appreciated this.
So go ahead and join us next week.
7:30 again on Friday night.
7:30 on Friday for Tales of the Queen Mary. I don't think I'm going to be putting out an episode of Steel Rails podcast this weekend. I think we're going to be sticking to every other weekend. So just go ahead and join us on Friday night at 7:30. And if you can't get enough of me here, go ahead and follow us on over to the Freaking Awesome Paranormal Show. I am Ryan's co-host every Tuesday at 8 o'clock CST. His show runs at 9 o'clock because he lives out east.
Out in Virginia.
Right. So if you guys want to watch our the Freaking Awesome Paranormal Show, that is every Tuesday at 8 o'clock my time. And then every Friday we put out supernatural news. I
don't know if
believe
you hear my password out there barking.
the vicious
dog. I'm not going to say.
So I believe we put out a supernatural news today. I only say believe because we recorded it yesterday. So
awesome. Well, CR, I'm signing off. Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Have a great weekend, everybody.